Joining us right now for a conversation about real estate, local New York City mayoral politics, and so much more, RXR Chairman and CEO Scott Rechler. Good morning to you.
Good morning,
I think we're all trying to figure out what's going on with the real estate market in New York City, but I think the overhang or overlay to all of this is what's just happened in this mayoral election, and I think a lot of people are surprised about it, and I know a lot of people in your business seem to be anxious about it. So what's your take?
I'm not really anxious about it. I was surprised about it, but you got to put it in perspective. There's really two things. One, Mamdani, he won the primary, right? And he was actually able to appeal to a very passionate, disenfranchised group that came out in big numbers. Now we have a general election, which is going to broaden the amount of people that actually vote in this election. And I think New Yorkers who come here for opportunity, that this is the capital of capitalism, I think, they're going to come out and say, I don't want a socialist for mayor. I think New York.
So you think he's going to lose?
And I think that when the general election, I think he's going to have a very hard time. We're the city that has more Jews in the world than anywhere else but Israel, and we have a mayoral candidate, who basically has, condoned anti-Semitic remarks and is anti-Israel. I don't think New Yorkers want to vote that on.
He won almost 500,000 votes in the primary. In the last general election, only 1.1 million.
And I think this.
You think there's going to be a 2 million?
I think what's going to happen. I think there'll be more passionate people that will come out for this election than they have in the past, because this is a very different than what New Yorkers have had before.
Yeah,
right?
What's so interesting is you had basically white, wealthy voters in New York voting for him. Mm-hmm. So it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, there's no doubt. But I think part of it was the nature of the campaign. We've seen this, by the way, throughout the country, right? And I believe it, right? There's a level of disenfranchisement for a lot of young people. The cost of living has gotten, way over the top here.
Right.
The widening inequalities. These are real issues, right? So I agree with his diagnosis, but I don't agree with his prescribed policies.
So I actually want to ask you about the prescribed policies for a second, because we were talking about this yesterday, and I've always said that I would love to make this city more affordable. I think everybody wants this city to be more affordable. By the way, there are a lot of cities that need to become more affordable.
Absolutely.
The question is, to your point, how do you get there?
Right.
I think it's building more. I think you just need a lot more buildings, which I assume means a lot more permitting, which means getting a lot of the red tape out of the way, allowing certain buildings that people don't want to go down to go down and go up, the whole thing.
That's right.
What is your prescription, given the business you're in?
Yeah,
and how much could that actually change the dynamic?
Yeah, listen, and you're 100% right. The way you deal with the housing shortage is you need to add more supply. And if you look around the country, to places like Austin, Texas, you haven't seen the spike in rent that we have here. We have a 1.5% vacancy rate. You need to build, and you need to build at every level. You need to build for public housing, you need young professional housing, luxury housing, and there's.
Right, but the problem is that most people in your business would prefer right now, to the extent they can build at all, they want to build luxury housing.
Right, but and then
it's a higher margin place.
There's good policies that could be put in place to change that, right? I mean, when I was here the last time, we talked about converting old office buildings to residential, right? And I'd said that could be a 10 to 20-year problem unless public policy comes in and accelerates it. Well, the city of Yes and then the M467 legislation had now created tax incentives, expedited approvals, and what could have been that 10 to 20-year problem is a 5 to 10 year, and what could have been 10,000 to 20,000 units being done is probably going to be 20,000 to 40,000 units of converting office buildings. We're doing it right around the corner.
How many units do we need to genuinely change?
And is it low-income housing?
Again, and this has been every study that's been done. When you build housing, it creates more housing for every level.
It's not low-income housing.
Yeah, it is. There is. No, it actually encourages 20% is low-income housing.
What's low-income housing? Because
it depends on the AMI.
It's like 800,000.
Right. It depends. Well, these are rentals, right? So it depends on it's a percentage of the income levels. But again, this goes back to your point, Andrew. The Minneapolis Fed put out a study, right? So that said that if you build housing, what happens at every income level, there's more housing. So people, they do well, they grow the next level.
You're saying don't worry about low-income housing, just build whatever.
No,
luxury stuff.
I think you should incentivize.
Should help other places.
I think you need to incentivize low-income housing, and I think there's different policies and prescriptions for that, right? There's public housing that you need a different set of policies to incentivize public housing than you do market rate housing. Market rate housing, you need to encourage to have some level of affordability within that market rate housing, which is what happens.
I think the description of affordability is really important, too. Like I said, in my town, when they put in affordable housing, there were $1.1 million units. The affordable ones were $800,000.
Yeah,
so it's not really affordable.
Yeah, I agree. And this is a challenge, right, that New York has, right? And by the way, this is also us being a victim of our success. We're attracting the best and brightest people around the world. They want to be here, right? You talk to every major CEO, This is where they want to be.
So let me push on one thing, and it's probably the single question I've been asked by people around this whole election in the past week. They say, do you really believe that people will leave the city in droves that are high-income earners or not if the taxes go up by 2%? That is a fundamental question. I won't tell you what the answer I've offered, but I'm curious what your answer actually is, given the other view, which I'll posit, which is it's Mamdani's view, which is that people love the city just the way you say they love the city, and they're all coming here anyway. Right. You have 1.5% vacancy.
Right, and I think that, again, I'm not leaving the city. Right? I'm here. I think under fringes you will lose some people that might leave the city, and we've seen that, right? And that if you think about, it's basically our top 1% makes up 40% of our income taxes. So you got to be sensitive.
Well, that's what I would say. If it's the billionaires you're losing, that's a big problem.
Right, that's a big problem. But I also want to be a really important point that people have not focused on. Let's assume Mamdani does become our next mayor. Right. At the end of the day, he doesn't have the power to do the things he's saying. He can't raise taxes. He can't raise real estate taxes. He can't change our transit system, can't give away free bus rides. It all has to happen in Albany. The night after the election, I spoke to the governor. She was clear, under her watch, whoever the mayor is, she's not raising taxes. So that's sort of a fear that people have that's not going to be a reality when we get through this.
We can impact services.
Listen, at the end of the day, spending money and giving away free things isn't the solution here. I mean, just one real quick point, right? The city council passed the budget last night, $116 billion. When Mike Bloomberg left office, probably the best mayor we've had in modern times, it was $66 billion. So almost twice. Do we have twice as good of services, cleanliness, homelessness issues? No. So we can't just spend money and think that's going to solve the problem. We need good policies that are focused on the issues that ultimately get to the root of the problem.
Scott, I want to thank you for coming in. We wanted to talk about real estate. We're out of time.
Next time.
No, before you go, how good, bad, where are we right now?
Great.
Great. Still great.
We're great. I mean, New York is anywhere in the U.S. is the best real estate market. We're back at levels on the office side of seeing things to 2014 levels in terms of leasing volume. Companies are growing. I asked some of the CEOs.
Office vacancies, we had somebody in the other day who said office vacancies are still well above where they were in 2019.
As an average. But when you look at the better buildings, we're in the single digits. And so what you've had, and this has been the phenomenon, this is why there's conversions, there's this flight to quality. If you own good buildings, you have a single-digit vacancy.
But vacancies are still vacancies if you're looking at the average.
If people don't want to rent in an old building because they don't want to bring their teams back to places like that, it's really not competing with the better buildings.